think we should start. Welcome to our third CJS Winter 2025 lecture. My name is Natsu Oyobe. I'm curator of Asian art here at the University of Michigan Museum of Art. Thank you for attending the lecture in person, despite the really icy roads this morning in Ann Arbor. For those attending in person, and welcome also to the attendees at the webinar. Before introducing today's speaker, I would like to make some general announcements. There's no CJS new lecture next week. However, please join us in 2 weeks on Thursday, February 20th, for the lecture, What Do Japanese People Want from Their Constitution? By former UN Professor of Political Science, Kenneth Mori McElwain. It will be held in WISA 1010, 10th floor, and on Zoom, in the same room. Please join us tonight at 7 p.m. for the CJS Winter Film Series screening of Emperor in August at the State Theater. This film takes place during the final days of World War II and depicts the intrigue surrounding the emperor. Some actors within the government advocate for surrender, while others desperately push for the fight to the end. Next week, join us for screening of Chronicle of My Mother at 7 p.m. at the State Theater. This film is based on an autobiographical novel by Inoue Yasushi. It follows a family as they deal with issues of abandonment, resentment, and the decline that comes with old age. As the main character grapples with his role as a father, he attempts to reconcile his relationship with his elderly parents. Tickets for both films can be purchased at Marquee Arts website. Please check our website and social media pages for more CJS films and events. For attendees joining the webinar on Zoom, webcams and microphones have been muted. We invite you to use the Q&A function during the lecture to submit questions, and our presenter will address questions as many as possible. The live transcription feature is enabled. If you rather not have captions, you can turn this feature off in the bottom right corner. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Mariko Okada. Dr. Okada is the 2024-25 CJS Visiting Scholar and a professor at the Faculty of Humanities, JF Oberlin University in Tokyo, Japan. And from 2012 to 13, she was the CJS Toyota Visiting Professor. Her research focuses on traditional Japanese performance, particularly geisha practices in Kyoto and the experiences of Japanese female performers in the United States during the Meiji period. She is the author of The Birth of Kyomai, Inoue-ryu Dance in 19th Century Kyoto, Japan, which won the 2013 Century Prize for Social Sciences and Humanities, and has contributed to several English publications of war performance and gender history. I myself learned a great deal about Japanese performance history and current state of traditional performance, such as No and Kabuki, from Dr. Okada. We did have a few collaborations together, which I enjoyed tremendously. In 2016, Dr. Okada and I co-curated an exhibition of Kabuki actor Prince from our museum's collection, in which we tried to compare the idolization of Kabuki actors with today's celebrity culture. Dr. Okada also conducted a workshop for deciphering cursive style writing using our Edo period ukiyo-e collection, which many instructors and students attended at that time. The TBP professorship gave tremendous opportunities for the Japanese studies community here to engage with and benefit from scholars like Dr. Okada. Now, today's talk is titled Dancing in Motion, Untangling the Framing of Geisha in Early Cinematic Records. She told me that this topic was on her mind since she first started researching the Meiji period introduction of geisha when Japan was negotiating its national image. During this year's research leave, she was finally able to return to this topic. We will hear the fruit of her research today. So please welcome Dr. Mariko Okada.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction, Natsu. And thank you all for coming today despite this cold and severe Michigan weather. And I would also like to express my gratitude to those who are joining online. And I'm especially grateful to Sarah for organizing today's noon lecture, and to Yuri, Jillian, Peggy for support during my stay at CJS. And my thanks also go to Professor Tonomura, so who first connected me with CJS, and the entire CJS community for always warmly welcoming me. So I want to talk today about a research topic that has been on my mind for the past 30 years, as I introduced. So as a graduate student researching Kyoto's traditional dance, I spent my days combing through old documents at the libraries and archives. So finding sources related to dance was particularly challenging. So I sometimes escape from them and enjoy reading something related. So then I came across the book titled 京都の映画80年の歩み this one. 80 years from Kyoto's film history. So there was an unexpected revelation. The very first cinema actor in Japan was Geisha from Gion. So here is the content. So Geisha from Gion entertained the guests and performed dancing Miyako Odori at the 1893 World Columbian Exposition in Chicago. And Edison's film crew who exhibited the Kinetoscope recorded their dance on film. And in 1896, when the Kinetoscope was introduced to Japan, this footage was among the first films shown to Japanese audience. So, wow, amazing. So this was my first reaction. So now I will introduce a little bit about Miyako Odori and Kinetoscope. So this book does not explicitly state it, but the common story in film history is that the geisha performed Miyako Odori in Chicago. So Miyako Odori is an annual dance performance by Geisha Gion District, and held annually in April at the theater in Gion. First performed in 1872 as a part of Kyoto Exposition, and it has continued to today, except a few years from around 1945. And the year 1945, please enjoy tonight's film. So each year, the features a new choreography and musical arrangement, but it always highlights iconic scenes from Kyoto's history and seasonal beauty. And guests are served tea and sweet. So serving tea is truly distinctive and essential feature, so please remember. And the kinetoscope, it was an early motion picture exhibition device developed by Thomas Edison and William Dixon in the late 19th century. So designed for individual viewing rather than projection onto a screen. So it's something like virtual reality equipment today. And so the premiere was held at the Brooklyn Institute of Arts and Science on May 9th, 1893. And so it was not exhibited at the 1893 Chicago Exposition. So it lost popularity by the late 1890s with the spread of projected film screening. So let's return to Japanese history. The story that Gion's geisha traveled to Chicago had been repeatedly mentioned in film history narratives. So Tanaka Junichiro mentioned the name Murakami Taizo and Shibata Chujiro, who exhibited a Japanese-style garden and a tea house at the exposition, and had geisha from Gion served tea and entertained guests. And Arai Shokai Trading Company, which imported the Vitascope, which is Edison's film projecting equipment, was jointly funded as by Arai Saburo, Kushibiki Yomindo, and Shibata and Murakami. Kushibiki was also a well-known Japanese impresario who organized the expositions and was also known by nickname Rankaiya, is a short version of Hakurankaiya. And he was also instrumental in spreading Japanese garden in the United States. And Tsukada Yoshinobu's extensively revised work of film history, he cites a newspaper article from the time of Kinetoscope debut. An article titled Katsudo Shashin Motion Pictures in a Jiji Shimpo newspaper dated January 31st, 1897, mentioned the 20 Mariko from Kyoto traveled to 1893 Chicago Exposition to perform Miyako Odori. Takahashi, the importer of the kinetoscope, likely learned about the device from the client who had seen it at the exposition. So it has already been confirmed that it was not exhibited at the exposition, but there are still websites that claims it was. So here is the timeline of the related kinetoscope. And from May to October 1893, the Chicago Exposition was held. Then in November, on November 17th, 1896, the kinetoscope finally arrived in Japan. It was first demonstrated to Prince Komatsu under the name of Shashin Nobuto. And after that, on November 25th, public screening started in Kobe, then expanded to Osaka and Kyoto. But kinetoscope didn't last long because the cinematograph and vitascope projected film technology started being introduced. So the first time I saw the video was on a VHS tape released in 1999. This video is a collection of paper print films from the Library of Congress. And the clip was titled Imperial Japanese Dance by Sarashi Sisters. So this VHS narrator was Sakagami Jiro, who some of you might remember from the CJS Noon lecture 2 weeks ago. He was one of the Konto Goju Gogo with Hagimoto Kinichi. So in his narration, Sakagami mentioned that Sarashi Sisters were Broadway stars. So later, I discovered the same video on Library Congress American Memory website. The Edison film catalog described the movie as a charming representation of the Mikado dance by 3 beautiful Japanese ladies in full costume, very effective when colored. So I was investigating the claim that the Gion Geisha traveled to Chicago, and which were filmed for Edison's kinetoscope. But I examined records from the exposition and contemporary newspapers. However, I could not find any contemporary sources confirming this. Then, a passage in a book by Kurata Yoshihiro caught my attention. When Keizo arranged for 6 girls aged 14 to 17 to perform at the Imperial Theater in Chicago on June 5th, 1893. It was during the World Columbian Exposition. So they were promoted as Mariko apprentice geisha from Osaka and Kobe. So he launched the show on July 29th, theater on 60th Street. Repertoires including Nuno Sarashi, which is recorded in kinetoscope. So I concluded that the dancers in kinetoscope were not Gion geisha, but most likely them. So I wrote this chapter and discussed the significance of the fabricated story of the Gion geisha participating in Chicago World Fair, and the great inventor Edison filmed their dance, which is Japan was at that time, it was they have won the first Sino-Japanese War, was striving to establish itself as a major power. Film historian Iwamoto Kenji shares the same perspective and has recited my chapter in his work. He also discusses the possibility that the 写真の舞踏 photograph dance built by Prince Komatsu might not have been this particular film. Additionally, he presents new findings from the work of Charles Masser and Josephine Lee. So Josephine Lee discussed the operetta The Mikado as an imagined Japan, referencing the Imperial Japanese Dance, stating, eventually, this imagined Japan even became the frame for the real one. So she presented this kinetoscope and a photograph of 3 Japanese women titled Three Little Maids as evidence of the widespread popularity of the Mikado's 3 Little Maids at the time. So Charles Masser cites an article from the New York Herald. The article describes the 5 little Japanese girls came and danced in second act. They danced a court dance, pleasant dance, and a flower dance. And another little Japanese girl slammed a fiddle. And the little old Japanese women crooned as though it hurt her. And the serving of tea in the theater lobby. And just before the little Japanese girls danced. Their new dance was a figure peculiar to Niigata and Shichifukujin. The Shichifukujin is still performed today as a standard Jutamai piece. The Niigata dance is likely referring to Echigo-jishi, which it's also common. So, first, let's consider the possibility that Imperial Japanese dance was the same as a photographic dance shown in Japan. Since kinetograph film did not have an embedded title, they were referred to by various names in the United States and Japan and maybe all over the world. The document I will show you in this talk shows the Imperial Japanese Dance is the name of the dance group, and the Sarashi might be the dance title. So these 2 films are likely the same based on the newspaper description of the kinetoscope screening, which I will introduce shortly. So however, Iwamoto also pointed out that possibility of other interpretation of the first dance of photograph, 写真の舞踏. Iwamoto suggested the popularity of Annabelle's butterfly dance during the Vitascope era. Among the 10 kinetoscopes shown in Asakusa in January 1897, a film titled Illustration of Western Dance might be it. So, however, it is not natural that the dance footage shown on November 17 was not publicly presented until January. So, another central question which is today's main topic, who were the Sarashi sisters? Iwamoto and I identified the performers as among 6 girls led by Uenishi Keizo, and Massa citation showed the girl who appeared in the second act of the 1894 production of the Mikado. Were these 2 groups same? Additionally, we need to consider the involvement of Murakami Taizo and Shibata Chujiro, the claim that these performers were Broadway stars. So the newspaper describes the 3 dancers, and we know the kinetoscope shown was Imperial Japanese Dance. So it wrote, the dance is so vividly depicted that it feels as if one were witnessing it firsthand. And had this taken place during the later Han Dynasty, Emperor Wu would have had no need to summon Lady Li's spirit. So now let's look at this widely praised footage.
From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
So, how do you feel watching? And it's a very short clip, But it must have been fascinating for people to see the moving image for the first time. But from the dance perspective, it's pretty unpolished. The fabric gets tangled to the central body, dancer's body. So while the newspaper praised Kinetoscope exceptionally, the same newspaper reported, this is English translation, Japanese officials opposed Uenishi Keizo's Japanese dance performances, and the authority did not allow his participation in the exposition. So he could only allowed to rent the Grand Opera House in the city for single promotional performance. And also he decided to stage performance outside of the exposition at the theater on 60th Street from the July 29th. So it seems that there was no Imperial Theater in Chicago then. On the other hand, the Grand Opera House was an actual venue near the Joffrey Ballet today. So maybe here is a venue and here is a Joffrey Ballet. And so let's take a look at the Chicago World Fair venue. So exposition was held in Jackson Park here. And the exposition, this is the guide map. And one of the most frequently mentioned Japanese structure imitating Byodo-in Temple, Ho-Oden, was located at the northern tip of Wooded Island. And Japanese tea house and tea garden was slightly away from the Ho-Oden. The Midway Presence, where many spectacle shows were presented, extended westward from the main fairground. Japanese bazaar were quite closer to the main exhibition area. So this map suggests Japan obtained a good location within exposition ground. So this is a famous Ho-Oden and located near United States government building. So this is the United States government building, and here is Ho-Oden. And so this is a tea house and a tea garden, which is also by the water, but a different location from the Ho-Oden. So, however, no existing evidence confirms that women served tea at this venue. And so main attraction of Midway Presence was a Ferris wheel, and which stood here. And based on this photographic taken from the Ferris wheel, maybe Japanese bazaar must be look somewhere around this spot. So some article describing activities at the Japanese bazaar mentioned the women with black hair stuck as full of pins who spoke English fluently were disposing cheap funds at a fabulous price. And also there was a woman who demonstrated art of tea. And on September 14th, a Chicago newspaper wrote about Uenishi's Japanese dance, the Miyako Dancing Theatrical Company on 60th Street and Stony Island Avenue gave a private performance in the New York State Building. Here is the one, a New York State building, and 6 dances were given. And the whole performance was under the management of Kei Uenishi. After the entertainment of refreshment were served by Japanese Tea House of the World Fair. So we can say that the Miyako Odori at the Chicago Exposition did happen. So when I first saw the article, I was pretty surprised. The group called itself the Miyako Dance Theatrical Company, and for their performance in New York State Building on September 13th, they presented 6 dances. And one of them, Ataka, matches what was mentioned in an article in Japan. So since this event was a part of New York State-sponsored program, refreshment from the Japanese tea house at the fair were served to the audience. So let's go back to the map. So New York State Building is here, and as for Miyako Dancing Theatrical Company, even though they were technically outside of the fair venue, but we can now see they were very close to the fair. So, and they were performing under the title of Miyako Dancing. Miyako Odori was first performed in Kyoto in 1872. Still, since this was not an era like today where videos could be easily shared, so it's unsurprising that people who had never been in Kyoto might have assumed that Miyako dance at the exposition was the same as the one of Kyoto. So furthermore, they shared the stage with Sando at the Trocadero, and where their act was advertised as Japanese Miyako dance. And this advertisement ran from August 26th to September 7th. September 2nd, sorry. And on August 27th, it even featured an illustration of Sando. Here is Japanese Miyako dance. And so let's go back to the map again. Trocadero Theater is directly northwest, shares the northwest corner of the Art Institute of Chicago. And the Trocadero was quite far from the exposition ground, but Japanese performance there likely had a profit. The director, Florence Ziegfeld Jr. brought Sando from New York to launch his Chicago performance. Thanks to an intensive publicity campaign, his debut on August 1st at the packed theater. So 1 month later, with enthusiasm for Sando still running high, it's likely that Japanese Miyako dance sought to ride the wave of his popularity. So although they could not officially participate in the exposition, they eventually entered Midway Plaisance. Of course, considering the location, all they had to do was just cross the street. And an advertisement mentioned the Royal. Here. And also their group size had increased to 9 performers. The Chicago World Fair also saw some unbelievable events. One such case was Hermann Zeitung, an Austrian who shipped himself to America in a box. So now we know that the former Nissan president escaped from Japan in the box, so this may not surprising today. However, at that time, when travel was by ship or by train, such an act was truly life-threatening. So Zeitung turned his adventure into a theatrical act and began performing on stage. So meanwhile, at the end of the year of the fair, during the week of December 25th, performance titled The Japanese Dancing Girl and Royal Court Japanese Dancing Beauties was staged at the 9th and Art Dime Museum in Philadelphia. So an article from January 9th mentioned that one of the Royal Court Japanese dancers performed a wedding ceremony demonstration. Of course, they served tea and performed the dance during the event. So, and finally, they arrived in New York, and they were introduced as a Royal Court Japanese dancers from Midway at the World Fair. An article from January 14th described their performance similar to their Philadelphia event. They performed a wedding ceremony demonstration along with traditional Japanese dances. In February, they traveled to Boston. Their number had increased to 16 performers, and the total is 25. And however, these articles do not provide details about their performance. Instead, they introduced their performance as a women serving the Mikado. So this timing is significant just before the outbreak of the First Sino-Japanese War, and Japan's Mikado was a substantial topic in the global news, and they may have capitalized on this attention. And of course, the famous operetta Mikado. The illustration in the Boston advertisement are identical to those from the New York performance, so which strongly suggests a direct connection between the two shows. After that, there were no further reports until the appearance in the Mikado at the Fifth Avenue Theater, as Massa cited. This production began on June 14th and incorporated Japanese dance into the second act on June 20th. So the group consisted of 10 in number, aged 16 to 18. And the list of dance pieces, including Shiokumi, Kappore, Shikinoama, and Sanja, are all titles we've seen earlier. So these common elements suggest continuity between the performances. So at first, inserting traditional Japanese dance into the operetta The Mikado was met with skepticism. The phrase, the odd, quaint, and unconventional reflect initial criticism of the addition. However, during the peak of summer, when only 2 theaters were open, on Broadway, the production ran for almost 3 months, surpassing 100 performances. As the show continues its successful run, the Japanese dance in the second act gradually gained recognition. Throughout the summer, the Mikado's long run consistently praised, and advertisement began highlighting the Japanese dancing girls in second act ahead. And after exceeding 100 performances, the production appears to have ended during the week of September 1st. So after that, they returned to Hoover's 14th Street Museum, and they used the same illustration in advertisement, but this time their name changed to the Imperial Japanese Dancing Girls. So the Japanese word musume also seems to have gained popularity. Then it says the graceful troop of musumes from the land of the Mikado. So I have summarized the performance history first during the exposition and then after the exposition. So please see the handout. I could not fully trace their footsteps, but I could identify some key points. So looking at their performance over time, they looked like the same people. So their title also changed over time. At first, they called themselves Miyako Dance, and then Royal was added, and Miyako disappeared. And then Court was added. So after performing on the Mikado stage, Imperial was included in their name. So their repertoires consisted of similar Kansai region dances, including Sanja, Ataka, Neanogi, and so on. The number of performers seems questionable, but since newspaper mentioned that Japanese women sold to brothel in Chicago and other cities, it is possible to recruit new members. And marketing the teenage age as a selling point is unfortunate and resentful, but continues to the present, and which recalls last week's Sachiko's lecture. And the age range is somehow the same. The one common feature of their performance was their role in serving tea, a unique feature of Miyako Odori and the dance performance at the Geisha district. So let me brief touch on the circumstances surrounding this dance group. So first, regarding the Chicago World Fair and Miyako Odori, there were reports such as the following. So in Chicago, a woman named Shimazu Otome took advantage of a failed attempt by Osaka-based Murakami Takashi's troupe, which had traveled to the United States intending to profit from Miyako Odori performances at the Chicago Exposition. So exploiting their unfamiliarity with the local area, Shimazu deceived and took control of women in the group. So yes, I will mention Shimazu Otome later. And the name Murakami Takashi might be mistaken for Murakami Taizo, but I didn't have further information from this. This kind of sex trafficking is also evident from other sources. So according to a survey by Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so there were Japanese prostitutes recorded across the United States. And Shibata Chujiro, who was said to have sent geisha to Chicago and later involved importing Edison's Vitascope, was reportedly operating a brothel with Japanese prostitutes in Chicago. And the Kyofukai, Japan Christian Women's Organization, was already established and started an anti-prostitution campaign. So Japanese immigrant communities in the United States tried to prevent prostitutes from entering Chicago. So we see the name of Jumonji Daigen, who was the first benshi in Tokyo for the Edison's Vitascope, and he was also once at the University of Michigan. And there were also numerous attempts to showcase Japanese women overseas. Okura Kihachiro founded one of the largest zaibatsu and dominated the Japanese economy. Masuda Takashi was the head of Mitsui Zaibatsu and also known as Donno, a master of ceremonial tea and a fine arts collector. So here again, Hashimoto Umetaro and Shibata Chujiro. And they attempted to send women to the Buffalo Exposition but failed to obtain permission. Hashimoto Umetaro married to Shimazu Otome, and this couple operated a brothel in Chicago. According to Chicago Nikkei Hyakunenshi, a century of Japanese Americans in Chicago, they sold the brothel to Shibata. And for the Centuries Exposition, Miyako Odori performance was held. And according to the article in Discover Nikkei, this title is very impressive, but the Japanese officials tried to send them back to Japan. So, and also I need to clarify the popularity of Japanese dance at the time. Performances labeled as Japanese dance or Japanese court dance were frequently staged in various locations. Numerous articles describes charity events called Kirmes, and where amateur women dressed as Japanese and danced. So naturally, this trend was influenced by the Mikado operetta. And this operetta premiered in London in March 1885 and was performed in New York 5 months later. The 1894 performance at the Mikado performance at the Fifth Theater featuring Japanese dance appears to have been the theater's second staging of this operetta. So finally, I would like to mention the kinetoscope of Imperial Japanese Dance. Although the kinetoscope duration was slightly longer than in Japan, it is challenging to determine which kinetoscope were shown. However, this article from Pennsylvania reveals that Imperial Japanese Dance and Sando were shown together for the first time as part of the local kinetoscope exhibition. So it must have been their first time together in a year and a half, since the Trocadero Theater in Chicago in the summer of 1893. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for traveling with me to the Chicago 100 years ago. So thank you so much.
So if you have any questions, there's a microphone.
Thank you so much. This is a really great talk. The depth of your research is really mind-blowing. This is so cool. I had a question about the kinetoscope exhibitions and, pairing the Imperial Court dancers with Sandos. I was wondering what you would interpret the nature of Edison's capturing of, these performances, whether you think they're ethnographic or exploitative or, somewhere in the middle, like just how you would feel about all of these different performances that he captured at this time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's really a great question, but which I didn't think of well. But so the narrators Sakagami Jiro mentioned the Sarashi sister was Broadway stars, and I was searching the interview of the producer of that Japanese version of the VHS video, and he said the Edison tried to capture the popular, maybe popular performances in Broadway, and so Edison and Dixon was really aware of copyrights, and that's why the Library of Congress had a paper film, and it was to declare their copyright. So they used the paper film. So I thought maybe I don't know if Edison had a perspective of to make an ethnographic report, but maybe he wanted to make money with a new invented machine of kinetoscope and the film itself. So that's why he tried to take a picture of the popular performances. Yes, do I answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Do you know if any of the Japanese girls that were imported into these dances and brothels, do you know if any of them married into American men, or what would be the word, repatriated or moved to the United States and settled? And do you know if there are any family histories of these families down through time carrying these stories of their first movement into the United States and being filmed, etc.?
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, that actually here the Shibata Chujiro, who imported Edison's Vitascope to Japan, and also he is operating brothel in Chicago, and it was already the author of the article of Discover Nikkei, she wrote about his family lineage, and there is a quite famous Japanese singer, Watanabe Hamako, is a granddaughter of the Shibata Chujiro, and also there are really a lot of materials like list of passengers on the ship, and also the record of immigration. So maybe I should check those lists, but I didn't do it yet. Thank you very much. Yes.
Sort of related to that question, you mentioned that there was this marriage ceremony that happened, and you named the two people, and it happened like 10 times a day. So do you have any sense of like what that was about? Was this a completely, why would they have suddenly been staging a marriage ceremony?
Thank you very much. It's really great. But yes, I don't know why they suddenly performed marriage ceremony. But so here is Sakasato, the name, and also the Mr. Katsuma, and the different article said the Mr. Katama is a bridegroom and is a wealthy Japanese tea importer, and also the tea trade was very big issue in this period from Japan, and so I don't know why they suddenly started this kind of wedding ceremony, but maybe it's related to Mikado, Operetta Mikado, I guess.
Just to follow up very quickly, it does seem like everything seems very opportunistic and exploitative in various ways. So, like, as you told your narrative, I imagine that there are these people saying, okay, like how can we draw more audience in? Well, what can we do? And like that's perhaps how all of these ideas came.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, yes, maybe I will think about it more deeper. Thank you.
Before going to other questions here at the floor, there's a question from the Zoom audience. Which is, how would you say that these young women were classified as geisha? In other words, what elements or qualities made them geisha to the people of the time?
Okay, thank you. It's a really great question. And so I put the title that it's a representation of geisha, and my talk is related to the representation of geisha, but searching materials made me to go different ways. But anyway, I think they were promoted as Mariko of Kansai area, and Mariko is apprentice geisha, the younger geisha, and so but the name of geisha is not actually popular in this period. So in 1892, there was another operetta called the Geisha, and from that performance, the word geisha becomes more popular. So in this period, before that performance, I don't think the name geisha is popular. That's why not many, except the Japanese newspaper, the newspapers in the United States didn't use the term geisha. But so, thank you for this your comment. So I will make it more clear about that. Thank you.
Okada Sensei, thank you for the talk. I have a question about the aristocratic women, the kazoku, whose viewing of materials you mentioned at the beginning. I'm interested in the Arisogawa no Miyake. Which princess is that? And does she leave a diary? Is there any record from her?
Sorry,
At the very beginning, sorry.
Very beginning.
Yeah.
So this one.
Yes.
The first, the Takahashi Shinji, he was a producer of this kinetograph showing, and he present 写真の部と to Prince Komatsu Akihito, and then he present the picture to Princess Arisugawa, and so he then first he, according to the book of Tsukada Yoshinobu, the Takahashi made a very much use of these incidents. So Komatsu no Miya saw the kinetoscope, so let's see kinetoscope. So, and I'm sorry, I don't know I didn't search about the Princess Arisugawa yet.
Thank you for a great talk. I have kind of like a two-part question. One is, I'm curious if you encountered any materials materials in Japan that were trying to recruit girls, like for this Mikado performance, and or records that show these people trying to kind of gather the girls that would become these girls that travel to the U.S. to do these performances, and also the sex trafficking aspect is really fascinating, and I'm curious if you've encountered any materials that indicate that somehow, like this performance, that whether it's in the performance or in materials related to the performance, they were trying to signal that perhaps these girls were available for as sex workers, or if it was just even despite the involvement of a brothel owner, if it was somehow slightly separated and seen as kind of trying to elevate, this like cultural prestige, or because I was also fascinated by the wedding random wedding ceremony, and I wondered if that was one way to indicate that these girls were of quote unquote adult marrying age to sort of attract that kind of intimate and like sexual attention. So I'm curious if you've encountered any materials related to any of those things.
Yeah, thank you very much. There was one the article in the United States newspaper that they are making the Mikado production, so they are call for the performers in the Mikado production. But I think that production is not from the Broadway's professional performance. So in this period, I noticed a lot of performance were happened in many cities, and maybe it's a kind of charity show, and so the Mikado and the Japanese dance was really a good performance for them. So, and also, in a Japanese newspaper, there are a lot about prostitution to go to the foreign country, not only to the United States, but in China and Korea and also Europe. And so the Japanese government was really be careful about those women will damage the the reputation of the nation Japan. And so, but still, at that time, the prostitution was legal in Japan, and many people try to send those girls to outside of Japan and to make money. And yeah, there are a lot. So it's really difficult to test this footage. Their footsteps. So, but maybe it's really necessary topic to study about this period. Yeah, thank you so much.
There's a question from Dr. Catherine Mezer, and there are many, many questions. So I'll just pick one for now, and I will share other questions with Dr. Okada later. So, let's see, is there any evidence of their return to Japan? Were there any Asian American or other Asian girls involved?
Thank you. After the kinetoscope was sold in the United States, I didn't check the newspapers a lot yet, so I don't know if they went back to Japan or not. And also the names of those girls are still unidentified. So the only name was Sato something and in that newspaper. So I don't know whether they are Japanese. They had Japanese nationality or not. So maybe I should check from the list of the immigration record. So thank you very much.
So there's it's this very interesting confluence of a number of different things. One being kind of the novelty of the technology. So it's the first time a lot of people are seeing the cinematic graph or the other film technology, and there's also this element of exoticism, right? Seeing exotic people from exotic lands. Did you get a sense of how much actual dance training or Mariko experience these girls had, or was it just, that they got shanghaied and into showing up in the U.S. and somebody said, "Here, put on these outfits and get out there and shake it." What was it a completely exploitative and untrained thing, or was it actual Mariko that came, or somewhere in between? Did you get a sense of that?
From the footage of the kinetoscope, so actually, when I found this video from the VHS tape, I was really excited, and I did show the footage to my dance master. She is a headmaster of Kyomai Inoberu, and she said they are not trained, and I agree to her, because maybe we can do it in a same costume and just do having pro. So I don't think they are really trained dancers. But maybe if you have a chance to see the film of the Lumiere brothers, they really depict the Japanese geisha dance, and which is really trained dancers can be seen. So yeah, so I don't think maybe they just get girls of the certain age and say they are Mariko from Kansai region. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mariko-san and Okada-san. A lot of my questions have been answered. They have been sort of asked, and you've answered in rather broad way. But being a pre-modern historian who knows nothing about the Meiji period, so this is the 19th century, and so I'm trying to place this in long Japan's history. And so, we think about, history from a feminist perspective, or, gender history, and then also related to Japan's imperial ambitions and so on. And so I was trying to figure out how I can ask this question, but I'm trying to place this in a nice nutshell that I would be able to give to students in a lecture about the Meiji period, which I would give only in 20 minutes or something. So what do you think our takeaway should be in terms of a large understanding of Japanese history? All the wonderful archival research that you have done points to many things. And so I'm trying to figure out how I can present it to other people. And then one thing I thought about is that at World's Colombian Exposition, there are many other countries represented as well. So I wonder how Japan stands within that exhibition. And obviously, the Japanese government in Japan is trying very hard to impress their daughters and so on. And so do you have any sense? Maybe it's difficult to get that from Kinetoscope because you are looking at that one film. So you have some comments about that? Thank you.
So yes, thank you very much. It's a really great question, and I think about it. And so yes, I'm studying about Japanese the dance of geisha, Gion or Kyoto for 30 years, and I also noticed that it's like they try to showcase women dance to the world expositions and everything. And also Miyako Odori was first performed in the Kyoto exposition, and it was also to get attention from the foreign eyes. And so always the women dancers are utilized by those governmental policy. And so I think I need to, I should keep this perspective always. And for the Chicago exposition and this Kinetoscope, maybe, so for example, so the Japanese government didn't admit that the Japanese dance was presented to the Chicago exposition because Japanese dance is related to geisha's performance, and they were really looked down on geisha. And but the Edison's kinetoscope kept recorded that incident. So that is quite ironic fact, and that's why it's really interesting. And yes, I think this, and also then 3 years later they come back. The Kinetoscope film came to Japan, and then now there is another narrative was added, like Japanese geisha who present Miyako Odori in Chicago, and the great inventor Edison made a film about them, and so now they are praising geisha's performance. So it's maybe we can see this kind of perspective can be used. I don't know, but how do you think? Thank you very much for the question, but yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for a historical perspective about, exporting Japanese cultural performing arts. So over the 130 years since it started, to actually professionally trained geisha performance be promoted outside of Japan? I've been here since 2000. Before that, I was here for 8 years, undergraduate student and graduate student in 1970s. And especially after 2000, I came here to live. Big Japanese, traditional taiko group can just fill out 2,000 plus people in a hill auditorium. Mm-hmm. So I wonder, really trained geisha performance being, have you known that anywhere around the world?
So thank you very much for the question. But today, the number of geisha is decreasing, and so it's really hard to see geishas dance even in Japan.
That's why it has to be promoted, instead of being terminated, right?
Yeah, and also nowadays we don't say the geishas dance. It's already included in Nihon Buyo, and some dancers of Japanese dance is also worked as geisha today, and also the situation is completely different from this time. Now the prostitution is illegal, and the geisha are not regarded as a prostitute. So today we don't say that Japanese geishas dance, but we say Nihon Buyo, and maybe you can find a lot of Nihon Buyo dancers in the United States too. And I was looking at the advertisement of Japanese dance performance in San Francisco last month, and so I think there are a lot. But the problem is Japanese Nihon Buyo is really wide, and so many people doing Nihon Buyo too, even today in Japan. And so there is an association of Nihon Buyo Kyokai, and they try to promote Nihon Buyo too. And the headmaster of the Kyomai Novelyu she didn't come to the United States, but she went to France and had a performance. And so some Japanese dancers goes to outside of Japan to have performances. But the subsidies from the government is very low in Japan, and so they are really suffering from that.
So artistic part of the geisha performance is absorbed in the Japanese Nihon Buyo dance.
Yes. Yeah, kind of. So the Association of Japanese Dance was established in 1930. So it's far later than this period. And in this period in Japan, Japanese people didn't say Japanese dance, Nihon Buyo. So Nihon Buyo was the term Nihon Buyo was used just in maybe 1920s. So the what they are dancing is maybe not so much different from this period today, but the term is different, changed. So,
Nihon Buyo became like a global word? Japanese dance. Emoji became
yeah, Nihon Buyo, yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to make Nihonbuyo is the common language. So once I wrote a chapter of Nihonbuyo in a history of Japanese theater, which is published by Cambridge Press, University Press. So maybe, yeah. So thank you for your question.
Okay, so there was a comment from, again, Dr. Mezur to Professor Tonomura's question, and perhaps consider the culture of world fairs and exhibitions, the connection to other Asian performers to the waves of Orientalization, then Japonism, and then how dance becomes exotic at these fairs. Perhaps there is a culture of gender exoticism that travels through bodies and new media. So that was her comment.
Thank you very much. Yes. So thank you so much. So in this period, there are many articles that it's real. And so maybe this is for many audience, it is rare to see the real Japanese people from Japan. And so that make fascinating people, audience. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again. And and we'll, for anyone here and also on Zoom, we will see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.